The power of prayer. Psalm 3 stands as a testament to the depth of human emotion and the heights of unwavering faith. David's journey from despair to hope mirrors the experiences of many, offering a timeless message of trust, prayer, and divine deliverance. In moments of personal crisis, this psalm serves as a guiding light, reminding individuals of the enduring power of faith and the assurance of God's presence. Thank you for watching God's Word Inspires. Please subscribe to the channel to give me more motivation. I will pray for God's blessings upon you and your loved ones every day. I hope you enjoy this video. Historical context. The rebellion of Absalom. Psalm 3 is a raw, heartfelt cry from King David during one of the darkest chapters of his life, his son Absalom's rebellion. This wasn't just a political uprising. It was a deeply personal betrayal. Absalom, David's own flesh and blood, turned against him, rallying a chunk of Israel to overthrow his father's throne. Imagine the sting of that kind of disloyalty. A child you've raised, loved, and poured your heart into, suddenly becoming your greatest enemy. For David, this was more than a fight for power. It was a shattering of family bonds, a wound that cut to his soul. The Bible paints a vivid picture in 2 Samuel 15-18, where Absalom's charisma and cunning won over the hearts of the people. He didn't just challenge David's kingship, he humiliated him, forcing the aging king to flee Jerusalem barefoot, weeping, and stripped of dignity. Picture a modern equivalent, a CEO ousted by their own protege, or a parent estranged from a child who's turned others against them. David's world was collapsing, yet in this chaos he penned Psalm 3, a song of anguish and unshakable faith. This context matters because it grounds Psalm 3 in real human struggle. David wasn't writing from a place of triumph, but from a wilderness of fear and uncertainty. His story reminds us that even heroes of faith face moments where everything seems lost. Maybe you're watching this and feel like David, betrayed, overwhelmed, or running from a crisis that's turned your life upside down. A job loss, a family rift, or a health scare can feel like Absalom's rebellion, stealing your peace. Yet David's response wasn't to curse his fate, but to lift his eyes to God. What makes Psalm 3 so powerful is its timelessness. David's pain echoes in our lives when we face betrayal or loss, but his trust in God offers a lifeline. He didn't pretend the hurt wasn't real. He poured it out honestly, showing us it's okay to grieve, to question, to feel the weight. This psalm invites us to bring our raw emotions to God, trusting He can handle them. In a world obsessed with quick fixes, scrolling social media for distraction or numbing pain with temporary escapes, David's example points to something deeper, a faith that anchors us through life's storms. For Americans today, where anxiety rates are soaring, over 40 million adults struggle with it per recent studies, David's story hits home. We're bombarded with pressures, bills piling up, relationships fraying, or news cycles screaming chaos. Psalm 3 cuts through that noise, offering a quiet strength. David's faith wasn't blind optimism. It was a choice to trust God's goodness despite the evidence around him. As you reflect on this, think about your own Absalom moments. What's chasing you out of your peace? Psalm 3 whispers that even in your wilderness, God is near, ready to restore what's been broken. This context sets the stage for the Psalm's verses, each one a step in David's journey from despair to hope. It's not just ancient poetry. It's a roadmap for finding peace when life feels like a battlefield. As we dive into the verses, let's unpack how David's words can guide us to trust God, overcome adversity, and rest in His promises, no matter what we're facing. The surge of adversaries, Lord, how are they increase that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. These opening words of Psalm 3 hit like a gut punch. David's not sugarcoating his reality. He's surrounded, outnumbered, and overwhelmed. The phrase, "how are they increased?" paints a picture of troubles multiplying like wildfire, spreading faster than he can handle. It's not just Absalom, it's a tidal wave of enemies, former allies, and even his own doubts closing in. For David, this was a literal army. But for us, it captures those moments when life feels like it's piling on. Think about it. Ever had a week where one problem snowballs into 10? A car breaks down, then a medical bill arrives, followed by a fight with a friend. That's the increased. David's talking about a cascade of stress that makes you want to throw your hands up. In America, where 80% of people report feeling stressed daily, per Gallup polls, this verse resonates. We're juggling work, family, finances, and a world that feels like it's unraveling. David's cry is our cry when we're staring down a mountain of challenges, wondering how we'll survive. But David doesn't stop at naming the problem. He brings it to God. That's the first lesson here. Honesty with God is a strength, not a weakness. He doesn't fake bravery or hide his fear. He lays it bare, trusting God can handle his mess. In our culture, we're often told to keep it together or stay positive, but Psalm 3 says it's okay to admit when you're drowning. God isn't scared off by your complaints. He invites them. This vulnerability is what makes David's faith so relatable. It's not polished, it's real. Now imagine David penning this under a starry desert sky, his throne gone, his heart heavy. He's not just counting enemies, he's wrestling with the weight of rejection. Absalom's rebellion wasn't just a power grab, it was a public shaming. People who once cheered David now mocked him. That's a loneliness we've all tasted when friends drift away, co-workers betray, or social media amplifies criticism. Yet David's focus isn't on his enemies' numbers, but on the one who outnumbers them all, God. This verse also hints at a spiritual battle. The many rising against David aren't just people. They're the voices of doubt, fear, and despair whispering, "You're done." We face those voices too, thoughts that say we're not enough, that our mistakes define us, or that hope is pointless. But Psalm 3 teaches us to name those adversaries, not to ignore them. By voicing his fears to God, David disarms their power. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The shadows don't vanish, but they lose their grip. For us, this means bringing our overwhelming moments to God, whether it's a prayer whispered in traffic or a journal entry at midnight. Try it. List your adversaries, the worries, the what-ifs, the hurts. Then, like David, hand them over. It's not about denying the struggle, but redirecting your focus to the God who's bigger than it. This practice builds resilience, a faith that doesn't crumble when life gets heavy. As you carry this verse into your day, let it remind you that no matter how many troubles increase, they're no match for God's presence. David's story shows us that even when enemies, real or invisible, surround us, we're never alone. Psalm 3 is a call to trust God through the chaos, finding peace not by escaping trouble, but by facing it with Him. The mockery of the faithless. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. This verse cuts deep. David's enemies weren't just coming for his crown. They were attacking his faith, sneering that God had abandoned him. It's one thing to face physical threats, but this was a psychological assault, a cruel taunt meant to break his spirit. Imagine the voices circling David. Your God's done with you. You're too far gone. For a man who'd known God's favor, these words were a dagger, twisting doubt into his heart. We've all heard versions of this mockery. Maybe it's not a literal crowd, but a coworker's smirk when you mention prayer, or a family member dismissing your beliefs as wishful thinking. In a skeptical world, faith can feel like a target. Social media amplifies it, posts mocking spirituality or comments tearing down hope. For Americans, where 30% report feeling spiritually attacked at times, per Pew Research, this verse hits close. It's the sting of being told your trust in God is foolish, especially when life's falling apart. David's enemies weren't just guessing, they were banking on his failure. Absalom's rebellion seemed like proof David was on the run, his kingdom fractured. To them, it looked like God had bailed. We face similar moments when circumstances scream, "Where's your God now?" A diagnosis that worsens, a dream that crashes, or a betrayal that blindsides us can feel like evidence against God's care. The faithless, whether people or our own doubts, whisper that we're alone, that hope is a delusion. But here's where David's faith shines. He doesn't argue with the mockers or try to prove them wrong. Instead, he turns inward, anchoring himself in what he knows about God. This is a game changer. When the world says God's not there, David's response isn't to shout back, but to lean deeper into his trust. It's like a hiker caught in a storm, clinging to a rope they know won't break. That rope is God's faithfulness, proven through David's life, slaying Goliath, surviving Saul's spears, and now facing this betrayal. Let's make it practical. Think of a time someone or something challenged your faith. Maybe it was a friend saying, "If God's real, why is your life such a mess?" Or your own heart questioning after a string of bad days. Psalm 3 says, you don't have to win that debate. Instead, remember God's track record in your life. The answered prayers, the strength you didn't know you had, the doors that opened against all odds. Those are your Goliath moments. Proof that God hasn't left you. This verse also exposes the lie of the faithless. Their claim, no help for him in God, assumes God's power is limited by human failure. But David knows better. God's help isn't tied to our perfection or success. It's rooted in his character. This is huge for us. Whether you're battling addiction, grief, or insecurity, the world might say you're beyond saving. Psalm 3 says otherwise. God's help is bigger than your mess. For a modern spin, picture a single mom working 2 jobs, hearing whispers that she'll never get ahead, that God's forgotten her. Or a student facing anxiety, told faith is a crutch. Psalm 3 is their anthem, reminding them God sees their struggle and offers help no scoffer can erase. As you reflect, ask, where am I letting mockery, external or internal, shake my trust? Then counter it with truth. God is near and his help is real. This verse invites us to stand firm, not by silencing critics, but by resting in God's promises. It's a call to peace, a reminder that no taunt can separate us from the one who fights for us. David's faith in the face of mockery is our blueprint for overcoming adversity with grace. A declaration of divine protection. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of mine head. Here David flips the script. After crying out about his enemies and their taunts, he makes a bold declaration. God is his protector, his pride, and his restorer. This verse is like a sunrise breaking through a stormy night, radiating hope and strength. For Americans seeking comfort in a chaotic world, these words are a balm, a reminder that God's presence transforms even the darkest moments. Let's unpack the imagery. David calls God a shield, not a flimsy barrier, but a warrior's defense, strong enough to block arrows and swords. In his day, a shield was a soldier's lifeline, absorbing blows that would have killed them. For David, surrounded by Absalom's forces, this metaphor was vivid. God wasn't just watching from afar, he was actively guarding David's life. Today, that shield could be God's peace calming your racing heart during a panic attack, or his wisdom guiding you through a tough decision. It's the assurance that no attack, physical, emotional, or spiritual, can break through God's protection. Now think about my glory. In a culture where glory meant honor and reputation, David's was in tatters. He'd gone from Israel's golden king to a fugitive mocked by his own people. Yet he says God is his glory. This is radical. He's not chasing validation from crowds or crowns, but finding his worth in God. For us, it's a wake-up call. In America, where 60% of adults crave recognition per recent surveys, we often tie our value to likes, promotions, or status. Psalm 3 says your true glory, your unshakable worth, comes from being God's child, not from what the world applauds. Then there's lifter up of mine head. Picture David, head bowed in shame, fleeing Jerusalem. To lift one's head was to reclaim dignity, to stand tall again. God doesn't just shield David, he restores his confidence, reminding him who he is. We've all had moments where life knocks us down. Failure, rejection, or loss can leave us feeling small. Maybe you've lost a job and feel worthless, or a relationship ended, crushing your spirit. God steps in as the one who lifts your gaze, whispering, "You're still mine, and I'm not done with you." This verse is personal for me. I remember a season of burnout, feeling like I'd failed everyone. Prayer felt empty, but slowly, God's truth broke through. I wasn't defined by my mistakes. That's what David's claiming here. God's protection isn't just about safety, it's about renewal. For viewers, this is hope you can cling to. Whether you're battling depression, facing foreclosure, or healing from trauma, God's shield covers you, his glory defines you, and his hand lifts you up. Let's apply it. Next time life feels heavy, pause and pray David's words. Lord, be my shield, my glory, my lifter. Visualize God standing between you and your fears, restoring what's been stolen. It's not magic, it's faith anchoring you in God's reality. This practice can shift your perspective, turning anxiety into trust and shame into strength. David's declaration isn't blind optimism. It's rooted in experience. He'd seen God deliver before against lions, giants, and kings. That history fueled his confidence. You have a history too, moments God carried you through. Lean on them. For Americans craving peace in uncertain times, Psalm 3 offers a God who protects, honors, and restores. It's a promise that no crisis can outmatch his care. The assurance of God's response. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. This verse is a lifeline in Psalm 3, capturing David's raw prayer and God's faithful response. It's a reminder that even when life's falling apart, our cries reach God's ears. For Americans wrestling with loneliness or doubt, where 1 in 3 adults report feeling unheard per recent studies, this promise is gold. It says your voice matters, and God's listening, no matter how broken you feel. David's cry wasn't a polite whisper. It was a desperate shout, the kind you let out when you're at your wit's end. Fleeing Absalom, he had no palace, no army, just his voice and his faith. Yet he trusted that God heard him from his holy hill. A poetic nod to God's dwelling place, untouchable by human chaos. For David, this was Jerusalem's Temple Mount. But for us, it's the assurance that God's presence is always accessible, whether we're in a church pew or a messy apartment. Think about what it means to be heard. In a world of noise, endless notifications, talking heads, and inner critics, feeling truly listened to is rare. Maybe you've poured your heart out to someone, only to get a distracted nod. God's different. David's saying that when you cry out, whether in tears, anger, or quiet whispers, God tunes in. It's like a parent hearing their child's voice in a crowded room. Nothing else matters but you. This resonates today. Life can feel like a wilderness. Bills stack up, relationships strain, and the future looms uncertain. Prayer might seem pointless when answers don't come fast, but David's experience says otherwise. His cry wasn't met with instant rescue. Absalom's rebellion raged on, but with the certainty that God was engaged. That's faith, trusting God hears, even when the outcome's unclear. Let's make it real. Picture a college student overwhelmed by exams and anxiety, praying in their dorm at 2 a.m., or a dad, jobless, pleading for provision. Psalm 3 says, their cries aren't lost in the void. They land in God's heart. I've had nights like that, praying through fear, not sure if God was listening. Then a verse, a song, or a friend's call reminded me He hears. Your story's likely similar. Think of a time you prayed and felt God's nudge, even if it was subtle. This verse also challenges our view of prayer. It's not a vending machine where you insert words and get answers. It's a relationship, a dialogue with a God who knows your voice. David didn't need a script, he just poured out his heart. You can too. No need for fancy words, just honesty. Try it. Next time you're stressed, say what's real. God, I'm scared. I'm tired. I need you. Psalm 3 promises He's listening. For Americans seeking peace, this is huge. Anxiety often stems from feeling powerless, unheard. David's assurance counters that your prayers reach a God who's near, not distant. It's not about earning His ear, it's about trusting He's already tuned in. Reflect on this. What's weighing you down? Cry it out. God's holy hill, His presence is closer than you think, offering comfort that no storm can shake, peace amidst turmoil. I laid me down and slept, I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. This verse is stunning in its simplicity. David, hunted by enemies, finds the audacity to sleep, real, restful sleep, and wakes up sustained by God. In a world where 70 million Americans struggle with insomnia, per CDC data, this image of peace amidst chaos is magnetic. It's not just about catching Z's. It's about trusting God so deeply that even a storm can't steal your rest. Picture the scene. David's in the wilderness, Absalom's army closing in. Most of us would be pacing, hearts racing, replaying worst-case scenarios. Not David. He lies down, closes his eyes, and sleeps. That's radical faith. It's not denial, he knows the danger, but a choice to rest in God's hands. For him, sleep wasn't just physical, it was spiritual surrender, a declaration that God's got this, even when life screams otherwise. This hits home today. We live in a sleepless culture, screens glowing, minds buzzing, worries looping. Whether it's deadlines, family drama, or global unrest, something's always threatening our peace. Yet David's example says you can find calm in the craziness. His sleep wasn't powered by a perfect life, but by a perfect God. For us, it's a call to trust that God's sustaining power works even when we're unconscious, holding us together through the night. Let's get personal. When's the last time you slept easy, free from tossing and turning? Maybe you're like me some nights. My brain's a hamster wheel, chewing on what-ifs. Psalm 3 offers a different way. David's rest came from knowing God was his sustainer, the one keeping his world from collapsing. It's like a child sleeping through a storm because they trust their parents are watching. God's that parent, guarding you when you can't guard yourself. This verse also redefines peace. It's not the absence of trouble, but the presence of God. David didn't wait for Absalom to surrender before resting. He found peace in the mess. That's a game changer. Imagine applying this, closing your laptop after a brutal day, praying and letting go, or turning off the news, breathing deep and trusting God's holding your tomorrow. It's not ignoring reality, it's anchoring in a bigger one. Practically, try this. Before bed, read Psalm 3. Speak verse 5 aloud. I laid me down and slept, I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. Let it sink in God sustaining you, even now. If sleep's tough, pair it with a habit, a warm drink, soft music, or a gratitude list. These aren't fixes, but they're ways to lean into God's peace. Over time, you might find rest comes easier, not because life's perfect, but because your trust is deeper. For Americans craving calm, this verse is a gift. It says peace isn't earned by solving every problem. It's received by resting in God's care. David's sleep was a quiet rebellion against fear, a testimony that God's bigger than any threat. As you carry this truth, let it free you to rest, knowing the one who never sleeps is watching over you. Fearlessness and faith. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. David's final stand in Psalm 3 is a roar of courage. Surrounded by enemies tens of thousands, no less he refuses fear. This isn't bravado. It's faith so fierce it drowns out panic. For Americans facing overwhelming odds, where 50% report feeling powerless at times, per recent polls, this verse is a battle cry, urging us to trust God over fear. David's context was dire. Absalom's forces weren't a metaphor. They were real, armed, and out for blood. 10,000s paints a hopeless scene. Imagine a lone figure circled by a sea of hostility. Yet David says, I will not be afraid. How? Not because he's superhuman, but because his God is supernatural. His courage flows from every verse before God's shield, his response, his sustaining power. This is faith's crescendo, where trust becomes defiance against despair. We face our own 10,000s. Maybe it's not an army, but a flood of bills, a diagnosis with grim stats, or a workplace stacked against you. Fear whispers, you're done, just like David's enemies did. In 2025, with economic uncertainty and cultural divides, it's easy to feel surrounded. Yet Psalm 3 says, fear doesn't get the last word, faith does. David's not ignoring the odds, he's redefining them, knowing God's strength outweighs any threat. Think of a modern David. Picture a small business owner, crushed by competition, yet praying and pressing on. Or a teen facing bullying, finding courage in God's presence. These are Psalm 3 moments, choosing trust over terror. I've had mine. Standing up to doubt when a dream felt impossible, clinging to God's promises. You've got yours too. Times you faced the thousands and found strength you didn't know you had. This verse isn't about feeling fearless. It's about acting fearless. David likely felt his heart pound, but he chose to stand firm. That's key for us. Courage doesn't mean zero fear. It means moving forward despite it. Next time you're overwhelmed, try David's approach. Name the threat, then name your God. I'm scared of this debt, but you're my provider. I'm anxious about tomorrow, but you're my peace. It's a shift that builds boldness. For practical faith, memorize this verse. Speak it when fear creeps in before a big meeting, during a sleepless night, or facing a hard talk. Pair it with action. Take one step toward your challenge, trusting God's with you. It's not about denying reality, but declaring a bigger one, God's power over your problems. This builds a fearless faith, not reckless, but rooted in his promises. David's courage inspires us to face life's armies, big or small, with a trust that says, God's got me. For viewers seeking hope, Psalm 3 is your anthem. It's a call to stand tall, not because you're unbreakable, but because your God is. Let this truth sink deep. No matter the odds, you're never outmatched with him. A plea for divine intervention. David's heartfelt prayer in Psalm 3:7, Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly, is a raw, vivid cry for divine intervention. Picture a warrior in the heat of battle, surrounded by foes, calling out to God with unwavering trust. David doesn't just ask for help. He uses bold imagery to paint a picture of God's power. Striking the cheekbone? That's like landing a precise blow that stuns an opponent, leaving them dazed and unable to fight back. Breaking the teeth of the ungodly? It's a metaphor for disarming danger, like taking away a predator's ability to bite. David's not being cruel. He's expressing a deep desire for God to render his enemies powerless, ensuring they can no longer harm him or his people. This prayer resonates today. When life feels overwhelming, maybe it's a toxic workplace, financial stress, or personal betrayal, we too can cry out for divine intervention. David's words remind us that God sees our struggles and has the strength to protect us. Imagine standing at the edge of a stormy sea, waves crashing, yet feeling peace because you know God's hand can calm the chaos. This plea isn't about vengeance, but about trust in God's justice. By praying boldly like David, we invite God to step into our battles, bringing victory and peace. For anyone searching for hope, this verse offers a powerful reminder. No enemy is too big when God is on your side. Acknowledgement of God's sovereignty. In Psalm 3:8, David declares, "Salvation belongeth unto the Lord, thy blessing is upon thy people." These words are like a sunrise breaking through a dark night, offering hope and reassurance. David isn't just talking about himself, he's lifting his eyes to God's ultimate authority. Salvation, he says, isn't something we can earn or force. It's a gift from God alone. Think of a weary traveler, lost in a vast desert, suddenly finding a spring of fresh water. That's what God's salvation feels like, life-giving, unearned, and freely given. David's confidence in God's sovereignty reminds us that no matter how chaotic life gets, God holds the power to save and bless. This verse also expands beyond David's personal story to embrace all of God's people. It's a promise of collective care, like a shepherd watching over an entire flock, ensuring each sheep is safe. Today, this speaks to anyone seeking peace amidst uncertainty, whether it's global unrest, personal doubts, or family struggles. By acknowledging God's sovereignty, we find stability, like an anchor holding a ship steady in a storm. David's words invite us to trust that God's blessings aren't just for one person, but for communities, families, and nations who seek Him. For those searching for spiritual encouragement, this verse is a beacon of hope. It's a call to rest in God's plan, knowing He's working for our good. Imagine sitting quietly, feeling God's presence wrap around you like a warm blanket. That's the peace David points us toward, a peace rooted in the truth that salvation and blessings flow from the one who never fails. Timeless lessons from Psalm 3:1. Authentic expression of emotion. David's candid portrayal of his feelings encourages individuals to approach God with honesty, laying bare their fears and doubts. 2. Unwavering faith in adversity. The psalm exemplifies steadfast trust in God's protection, serving as a beacon for those navigating their own trials. 3. The power of prayer. David's experience reinforces the belief that sincere prayers reach the divine, offering comfort and intervention. 4. Divine justice. The vivid imagery of God confronting adversaries assures believers that injustice will be addressed in due time. 5. Collective blessing. The psalm concludes with a communal blessing, highlighting the importance of collective well-being in the faith journey. After watching, remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on the video. I have many good videos to share. Learn to give, and God will give peace to you and your family.